My name is Kimberly Carter. This will be a three-part discussion of prison overcrowding and potential solutions that will extend over 3 weeks, and then I will conclude the subject. In starting, addressing prison population issues has so far been met with a brick wall as places of confinement are erupting with overcrowding. Society's over-reliance on incarceration hasn't made our communities any safer. If anything, societal overuse of imprisonment has caused overall tensions and disdain towards law enforcement and the systems in place. Think about it. Every time someone is put behind bars, a family is torn apart. With millions of people locked up, there are even more family members left behind to suffer. Children and the elderly are hit especially hard. Our criminal justice system processes have no regard for the detriment done to families. There is too much dependence on the lock 'em up and tough on crime attitudes, which have failed. We see the detrimental results of these attitudes by what is happening in all cities today. The system didn't care about families, so why should they care about the system? There is more blatant disregard for law enforcement than ever before. Cities continue to become more dangerous. Billions of taxpayer dollars are wasted, and millions of lives are ruined because of reckless incarceration rates. In Washington state, there has been no follow-through in shortening long sentences. This would take a brave legislative passage, such as re-implementing parole or allowing good time to accrue on mandatory minimum sentences and leaving the retroactivity portion of the bill intact. Even in the face of tremendous efforts to end mass incarceration, including John Legend visiting the Washington Correction Center for Women here at Gig Harbor to highlight this very issue, nothing has changed. Washington is supposed to be a liberal state, yet has very harsh and rigid sentencing laws that offer no reprieve, but only dogged day-for-day time to be served. A sure solution could be to transfer all low-risk, long-term, incarcerated individuals to community custody after serving half of their sentences, rather than unnecessarily keeping them incarcerated. It costs Washington State roughly $40,000 a year to incarcerate one person versus $7,600 per year for community custody in Washington State, a figure that includes supervising costs, monitoring, and even support services necessary to help people transition back into society. It seems a transfer to community custody would be safer and more cost-effective than outdated and ineffective incarcerative methods. More parents would be available to care for their children, giving them guidance rather than repeating the cycles of incarceration, and $30,000 annually per person could be diverted into something much more meaningful. A strong incentive for one to succeed is to maintain their freedom and not risk a community custody placement revocation, commonly known as a CCP revoke. This means if someone violates conditions of community custody, they are returned to prison to serve the remainder of their original sentence minus good time. A rational human being will strive to prevent this from happening and not repeat any past mistakes. This is why first-time, low-risk individuals would be good candidates. If an incarcerated individual has spent a good amount of their sentence working towards self-improvement, then a transfer to community custody will positively impact the efforts of those incarcerated individuals who pose a low risk to reoffend. A safety net or filter, such as the incarcerated individual having to bear the burden before being released of proving he or she will not endanger anybody by making a showing of rehabilitation via certificates of programming, job performance evaluation, treatment records, etc., would need to be a requirement. Basically, incarcerated individuals would need to show that they have been rehabilitated and have a skill set to succeed after release. Many people engage in positive activities using their time constructively, and those individuals would be potential candidates. Further safety measures, such as longer periods of or stricter supervision of those deemed to need more guidance, could be implemented. When the community custody officer sees fit, the person can be released from supervision unless a mandatory and fixed amount of time has been set. This would help legislatures and the public feel safe by creating assurances concerning perceived dangerous individuals being accounted for and building up trust with communities, as well as giving guidance to the person coming out of prison and trying to get their life together. This would also bestow mercy and compassion upon those who have only made a one-time mistake. The case managers, commonly referred to as counselors, deal most closely with incarcerated individuals. They would be the best judge of whether or not someone is truly trying to change. The incarcerated individual could present a case initially to their case manager, who can then decide whether or not to present it to the Facility Risk Management Team, FRMT, which consists of the individual, the case manager, the correctional unit supervisor, and a custody representative. Once a case is approved by the FRMT, it would then be approved by headquarters to ensure everyone agrees on the transfer of custody. Furthermore, an infraction criteria could be set, which would give the department personnel even more of a picture of a potential candidate's behavior, and would also be a strong incentive for one to stay out of trouble while in prison and remain infraction-free. It would be each incarcerated individual's responsibility to present their case to the FRMT. Having case managers handle this process would eliminate the need to exhaustively implement some type of screening board. The FRMT may feel like this would increase their workload. Initially, this process likely would increase their workload, but gradually their overall caseloads would decrease as more people release. This screening process would eventually become standard routine. In order to facilitate a transfer of custody of this magnitude, investments would need to be made towards funding more community custody officers and resources. Perhaps this change could help DOC rely less on incarceration and enable the department to move staff from correctional officers to community custody officers. Some some of the money no longer being spent on incarceration could be reinvested in this direction. As long as an incarcerated individual has proven their rehabilitation, serving community custody time in lieu of incarceration is a much more positive option. This will ultimately make communities safer, keep families together, and divert billions of taxpayer funds into more sensible options. That concludes this week's discussion. If you want to reach out directly, I am an inmate at the Washington Correction Center for Women, and you can email me through Securus. Again, my name is Kimberly Carter, DOC 815679. I will talk to you again next week.